Welcome everyone. I'm glad you could all make it here with us today. Today I want to speak about how and why Pakistan has turned into a safe haven for terrorists. The rationale for creating Pakistan was to set up a bastion of armed extremists that the British and other Western powers could use to control the region. At that time, the West had serious fears of the Soviet Union's expansionist ambitions. The Soviets had taken over Central Asia, were moving southward, and the United States, Britain and other Western countries had to stop them. For this reason, they needed an ally in the region. Pakistan was created in 1947, at a time when the Cold War between the West and the Soviet Union was at its peak. The Second World War had just ended. The Socialist Soviet Union had taken control of half of Europe and was moving southward. The Anglo-Americans were overwhelmed with fear of the strengthening Soviet Union. The USSR was founded on a materialist ideology which posed a threatening doctrine for the Islamic world. Meanwhile, the Muslims who had separated from India, whose very basis of existence was the Islamic ideology, were full of zeal and fervor. 7 years after its creation, Pakistan was granted membership in Seattle, and 8 years after its creation in Centre, one focused on South Asia and the other Middle East, both established to prevent the spread of communism. Pakistan was rapidly emerging as a military state, one that was armed to the teeth with extremism and ideological fever. Thousands of political and intelligence-oriented mosques were established, backed by Western propaganda machines and intellectual centres. Before Pakistan has even reached its 30th year, the West had become disillusioned with Afghan leader Mohammed Dawood, sensing that this nationalist statesman not only sought to preserve Afghanistan neutrality, but was gradually leaning towards the Soviet Union. Shortly after the leftist coup, the Soviets were invited into Afghanistan. The people of Afghanistan launched resistance, and Pakistan reaped significant strategic benefits. The Cold War, which had been a global standoff, ignited into open conflict on Afghan soil, encouraged by the West. Pakistan helped intensify this confrontation, while Afghans were reduced to mere instruments and casualties of that struggle. Pakistan faced territorial disputes with its two key neighbours, India and Afghanistan, and thus required Islamic extremist militants to wage proxy wars against them. The various international militant groups that had gathered in the region during the Afghan Jihad could now be utilised against both of these rival states. For 130 years, this region was subjected to the Draconian Frontier Crimes Regulation, FCR, a law rooted in the medieval era which effectively turned it into a true land of rebellion. The British labelled it with names such as Zadistan, land of rebels, the no-go area, and Al-Kaghair, the excluded area, keeping it deprived, hungry and cut off from the modern world by deliberately denying access to schools and universities. Later, intelligent-linked mosques were established there, and during the Cold War years, the area was saturated with gunpowder, weapons and violence. Only more than a century later did people come to realise why this region had been deliberately maintained in such a condition. This region was effectively turned into a repository for the remnants of the Cold War. Pakistan concentrated within its wide array of militant actors, including Punjabis, Arabs, Tajiks, Chechens, Central Asian insurgents, Chinese Uyghurs, and its own radical groups, employing them either to challenge its regional rivals or at the minimum to exert pressure and intimidation. Over the past 2 decades, the Pakistani military had derived significant strategic benefit from this plan, while inflicting immense economical and social harm on the populations residing in Pakistan. It not only brought the entire tribal belt under its control, but also destabilized Afghanistan, but subsequently implanted these militant groups, a development that has now become a source of concern both for the region and for the wider world. The name of the Pakistan Taliban, and even the acronym TTP, first appeared in the media after September 11, 2001 attacks, when the United States and NATO invaded Afghanistan, and a large number of Taliban were captured in the north by local jihadist militias and the force of General Dostum. At the very outset of this major war, Pakistan employed its full diplomatic influence to secure the extraction of Pakistani Taliban who had been trapped inside Afghanistan. Whether by land or even by air, it is likely that one of these conditions for Pakistan's cooperation with the United States and NATO at that time was precisely this arrangement, which eventually accepted amidst the chaos. Thousands of Pakistani Taliban were airlifted out. Analysts of the period observed that the Pakistani Taliban were effectively part of Al-Qaeda and had been fighting against the northern warlords in Afghanistan. Among the early leaders of this movement was Nek Mohammed, who after the first war of the Taliban relocated foreign fighters from Sheikh Kot to the Azam Wasak area of South Waziristan. He gained particular notoriety when Tahrir-ul-Dash escaped alive from a fierce battle against the army in the village of Kolosha, south of Waziristan, and later Nek Mohammed signed a peace agreement with the Pakistani military. Nek Mohammed was killed in 2004, after which Abdullah Mahsoud, recently returned from Guantanamo, assumed leadership of the group in 2007. Under the command of Baitullah Mahsoud, the Tehrik-e-Taliban Pakistan, TTP, was formally announced. Following Batullah's death, Hakimullah Mahsoud succeeded him as leader. The Pakistani military then categorized its Taliban factions into two groups, so-called good Taliban and bad Taliban. For the public, distinguishing between the two was difficult, if not impossible. Nevertheless, the framework was drawn such as that the bad Taliban appeared to fight against Pakistan, while the good Taliban killed and coerced people in service of Pakistan's interests. The clearest reality is that all Taliban operated and managed at Pakistan's behest. Even now, when the TTP appear to be waging war inside Pakistan, many observers and analysts argue that the reins of control and management remain firmly in the hands of Pakistan intelligence agencies and militaries. Through the cultivation and deployment of the Taliban, Pakistan has pursued the following objectives: preservation of military power. The Pakistani military employs the Taliban to manufacture conflicts that justify its own survival and consolidate its political and economic dominance. By staging and publishing battles, operations and clashes with these groups, the military generates domestic political capital. This allows it to maintain overarching power over national politics and economic resources. Second reason is creation and monetization of a militant ecosystem. Pakistan has rendered a large swath of territory insecure and used as a sanctuary for international proxy militant, fundamentalism and terrorist groups. These groups are maintained and trained within that geography, and they're employed as an instrument in the strategic rivalries of major powers. In effect, Pakistan profits from this arrangement, charging for sheltering, training, equipping and deploying these forces. Consequently, a portion of the Pakistan's military political economic system operates through the management of proxy wars, strategic leverage and regional rivals. Pakistan uses the Taliban as a tool to train its immediate rivals, India and Afghanistan, while also leveraging their presence to extract consensus from other regional powers such as Iran and even China when necessary. In this way, militancy serves as an instrument of coercive diplomacy, allowing Pakistan to project its influence and secure advantage beyond its conventional capabilities. Suppression of domestic political opposition. Domestically, any political faction that challenges the military is targeted and eliminated through operations orchestrated against them, while responsibility is shifted onto the so-called bad Taliban. This enables the military to neutralize internal dissent covertly while maintaining plausible deniability. Erosion of Pashtun national consciousness. The Talibanization and Emirate-style Islamization of Pashtun areas has been used to undermine Pashtun national sentiment. By saturating the region with militant religious authority, the space for nationalist and patriotic mobilization is scattered, preventing the rise of collective Pashtun political assertion. Militarization of the tribal areas under the pretext of counter-terrorism. Since the imposition of the controversial Durand Line, Pakistani army has not permanently entered the tribal belt. For the first time under the pretext of pursuing the Taliban, it advanced into these areas and established permanent military installations. These allow the state to consolidate direct control over a region that has historically remained semi-autonomous. Control over the Afghan Taliban and suppression of reformist thought. Pakistan has deliberately embedded its own militant networks with the Afghan Taliban to ensure that nationalist, enlightened or modernist currents never gain space within their ranks. In reality, though these proxy forces, the Pakistani military maintain significant influence and control over Afghanistan Taliban, shaping their orientation in line with the strategic objectives.
We are out of time. I'm so sorry. This is brilliant. This is an amazing history lesson. It puts us that at 16 years old, you're so composed. Thank you so much. And obviously, we are rooting for you, and also we are rooting for PTM to have you one day as the leader of PTM in Europe. To close this session,